But this interview, take careful notes because there are going to be references. Brother David.
Yes, Brother Leroy.
God bless you. Thank you for joining us on the Communicators.
Thank you for the opportunity to present this project.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest is Brother David Head, and he worked for the MTA, and he's going to tell us very quickly. We only have a few minutes, but this is important. This is a classroom of importance for you, ladies and gentlemen, for your children and your grandchildren to hear. How did you come about the project that led you into research on Granville T. Woods?
I was watching a documentary on rail transportation in America, and it was 90 minutes, and there was no mention of the contribution made by African Americans. Rather than dwell on the negative, I began to move on the positive, and I wrote something for my Black History Committee for the transit system. I was the chairman, and I took on the responsibility to do some research in that area, and I gathered some information, and I came across many pioneers that made an elevated American society and even the world. At that time, they were also speaking about the subway system, which was built in 1900. So in the year 2000, it was going to be a centennial year. And they began speaking about the movers and shakers of the subway system's inception, and they failed to mention Granville T. Woods' electrical third rail system that made it all possible.
The third rail.
Yes, the third rail.
Well, tell us how you came into when you're watching this documentary and you said, hey, they're not mentioning any blacks. Is it because you knew of blacks, or you just knew that blacks had to be involved in some kind of capacity as it relates to the so-called industrial revolution in America and Europe?
Yes, I've heard. I'm an avid historian, and I read a lot of books on history, and I noticed that there was no mention of our contribution, and I knew that we had made a contribution, and a major one.
Okay, so among the people that you began to come across is Granville T. Woods,
yes.
I would imagine Lewis Latimer, and
Andrew
others.
Beard, the automatic coupling device.
No, wait a minute, who's that?
Andrew Beard, automatic coupling device.
Is that B-E-A-R-D?
Yeah.
Andrew Beard, the automatic coupling device. That's when the trains come together and they lock, ching-ching.
That's right.
Like a crab claw.
Exactly. Important inventions for the workers, because a lot of them was losing limbs trying to connect those powerful trains together. Then it was also Elijah McCoy.
Yeah.
With the automatic lubricating device.
Go ahead.
Yes. And
but
of course there was Granville T. Woods.
And you focused on him. What led you to focus right on him?
Because they were speaking about the subway.
Okay.
And they failed to mention his contribution, his major contribution, because there was New York City had a traffic dilemma. They went up with the elevator train, but the elevator trains were noisy, smoke, and it was very soot, a lot of soot. So they needed something to go underground, but they couldn't go underground with steam. And they needed something. They couldn't do it with a light rail system. They needed something with more power. And that was a problem. And he came along with that third rail electrical conduit system, which was displayed in Coney Island back in 1892.
1892.
Yes, 1892, 1893. He had an electrical conduit in the middle of the rail. You have two rails. In the middle of the rails is a slot, and that was where his first third rail system transpired from.
Isn't that how the trolley cars ran?
Yeah, the trolley cars ran. They had the overhead system, which would break down often. But to do away with that, he came up with this ingenious invention with an electrical conduit system.
So that's him too.
That was prior to the third rail.
Yeah, but I'm saying that's one of his creations.
Oh, yes, that's right. And then we decided to put it on the side of the track because putting it in the middle was more costly.
Okay.
So by putting it on the side, you have a live third rail on the side. That's why it had to go underground, and you needed a piece of wood to go over that. This way, nobody would get shot. And if it's in the subway, you don't supposed to be on the track. So
anyway.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. And what was the first innovation that you discovered or uncovered regarding Granville T. Woods? What was the first innovation, and that would lead you into the subsequent ones?
Okay, well, he had a system called the induction telegraph system, which was the first wireless communication. Everything is wireless now. He had the first wireless communication system on the railroad, which was basically a magnetic device. They call it a helix. It was a magnet with wires around it. And he placed that on underneath the train, and then he had another wire on the track. And when they passed each other, utilizing other electrical instruments, they would make a signal, and a relay would pass that signal on to a railway station, and they could pinpoint the train exactly where it was, and also be able to communicate with it orally by speaking or through the Samuel Morse code system.
Excellent, excellent.
Yes.
So keep on going. Tell us about Granville T. Woods.
Okay, but I've noticed when you first came on,
yes,
you spoke about how African Americans' contribution has been overlooked, marginalized,
yes,
and omitted. There's a book by Maury Klein. It's called The Power Makers, Steam, Electricity, and the Man Who Invented Modern America. And it was published in 2009, and there's not one word of Granville T. Woods. Okay? There's another a book by a gentleman by the name of Frederick Denzel, who speaks about Frank Sprague and the U.S. electrical industry, and there's no mention of Granville T. Woods either. Now, these people were contemporaries during Granville T. Woods' time, Frank Sprague, and he gets known as the father of modern rail transportation because he invented the first electrical trolley system throughout America. But it broke down very often. But he did put it in a commercial usage, but he's not the father of modern. He's the father of modern traction. But actually, Granville T. Woods is the father of modern rail transportation system with the third rail. Yeah, so and there's so many other inventors, like there's a gentleman by the name of James E. Lewis. He invented the antenna feeder for tracking radar, and it's used by air traffic controls and for military jets. And there's another gentleman by the name of Joseph Ganel. He invented the supercharger turbo system for cars back in 1976. And Richard B. Spikes, who was a prolific inventor like Granville T. Woods, invented the automatic transmission.
The automatic transmission.
Yes. So there's so many contributions.
Wait a minute. You got a lot of brothers just they cut off the TV looking at the football game. The automatic transmission is who? Richard
B. Spikes.
S-P-I-K.
He invented quite a few inventions. He was a prolific inventor like Granville T. Woods back in 1932.
1932. You mentioned 1976.
1976, who was a gentleman that made Joseph Ganel, Ganell. He invented the turbo supercharger system.
Okay. Man.
Okay. And James E. Lewis, he invented the antenna feeder for tracking radar, and is utilized for air traffic controls, which is a very important safety device in coordinating air traffic.
This is WHCR 90.3 on the FM dial, coming to you from the campus of City College in Harlem, USA. This is a Christmas present, if you want to call it that, ladies and gentlemen. The Christmas present, the best Christmas present that you can give another black person, child, or an adult is knowledge. Give them some insight. Give them that which enables them to know who they are, where they're actually from, and what their destiny is. We're just talking about a piece of that. And our guest online is Brother David Head, formerly with the New York City Transit Authority, MTA, and worked in the subways, and as a Black History Project, came across invention after invention of black men and women. And that information is important to you and I so that we can instill in our children that they don't have to be panhandlers on the street. And this is what this thing has come down to. A lot of our young brothers are panhandling on the street, everyday guys. They ain't even down and out. They just panhandling. And a lot of them have come out of foster care, taken from their parents at an early age and farmed out phased out at 18, 19, 21. The age is where they're phased out of foster care, and they've been bounced around from foster care home, from school to school. They don't know how to read and write. They don't know how to math. But it's never too late. They can always accomplish if we begin as a community to take control of the destiny of our people, and with appropriate action, with proper action, and that is doing for self, doing for our children what we have not done yet, to take them out of the claws of the miseducation in this miseducating education system. Now, what I heard you say indirectly in terms of pointing to the books that were written on in 2009 by this individual, and you said nothing is mentioned on Granville T. Woods and other black men who helped the industrialization of America, the great minds that have come out of our community. And what that says to me is that when our children go to school and they're reading textbooks that talk about inventions or history, if they even get that today, that we are missing, black people are missing. And that's nothing for you to go down to Bloomberg and Dennis Walcott and cry on your knees. It's for us to begin Black history classes every week in our churches, in our mosques, in our masjids. It is not a luxury. It is a necessity to do that. So continue with Granville T. Woods, his life, who he was, and what happened to his inventions.
Okay, now, Granville T. Woods was a prolific inventor. He utilized his hands and his mind to elevate society through creative expression that lied with him, his God-given gifts. And it's important that black people begin to tell their stories. I just written a book. It's going to be published very soon. I'll give you the contact information for people at the end of the program. But it's also important to put together curriculums about science and technology so the kids can constructively engage themselves with a tangible component so they can be pulled in and start to develop and encourage that in that direction. And there are so many men who are retired, young, bright men who's into engineering.
Yes.
They need to connect
and
begin laying out those things for our people.
Yes.
So they can begin to encourage these young men in the urban centers, young women too, that they can become engineers. Everybody's not a basketball player, a football player, have that talent, or can sing, or be a rapper. They need to understand that inventing is a career as well. Science, technology, engineering, all those are very important things in society. And those things you can utilize those careers for years and years. Sports is only very short term. And so that's important that we put things together, the people that have the ability to do that.
Listen,
yes.
Your perseverance and determination, we need to plug into a part of that for our audience. You didn't just stop at okay, wait a minute. You took the information that you got about Granville T. Woods and others, and you put it into a Black History display. Just lay that one out for us, and what that led to.
Okay, that's important, yes. What my mission became, after I seen that Mr. Woods was left out of New York City Transit Annals, I decided is to take on the mission to get him recognized and acknowledged properly. And I did research on Mr. Woods for 6 years. I traveled to Columbus, Ohio, found information about his family, the books that he studied to learn more about the patent process, and I went to Howard University. I initially started at the Schomburg in New York City. I found archives material from Mr. M.A. Harris, whose shoulders I stand on, who was able to get a school and a burial plate and name in his honor, and found his site where he's buried. So I was able to utilize all that information I put it together in a booklet format, and I was able to present it to the Vice President of Corporate Communication, Mr. Paul Ferranges. He liked the material, and we put together, me and my graphic artist, Adrian Hunter, we put together an exhibit, a small exhibit, and they liked that. And in 2004, the subway began operating in 1904. They started building it in 1904.
Yeah.
So in 2004, it was the centennial operation.
Beautiful.
And my dream became a reality when the MTA chairman opened Centennial Year with the Grand T. Woods Subway Centennial exhibit, which shortly thereafter there was 4 million Metro cards printed up to acknowledge Grand T. Woods as the key inventor for the New York City subway system.
Go ahead.
2 million in Spanish and 2 million in English. So beyond that, I started going out after the MTA utilized the exhibit for a year. I began going out to libraries and schools with the exhibit, making presentation, using it as an educational tool to inspire and motivate our youth in the area of science and technology, and also to tap into their God-given creativity, to identify and begin to develop it.
What was the reaction? Some of the reactions, real quick.
I got a lot of beautiful letters from the principals, the teachers, the students. They all embraced the project. And that just set me out to go to get a street name after Grand T. Woods. I went back to Coney Island where he tested his systems, where they tried to steal his inventions, and through the help of the community board, 13, I was able to get a street when you come out of the F train, Coney Island station, at the last stop. It's called Grand T. Woods Way.
So here you are, Brother David Head. Ladies and gentlemen, and I'm only rushing because of the limited time, but this is really an interview that is properly put into an hour, and I would hope that there are other so-called talk show hosts who will pick up on the fact that this brother exists and interview him. But I can't make him do that, ladies and gentlemen. You know, Brother Leroy is so unique. The guests I get, I don't know. And I'm saying that because there are so many guests out here who have some information to offer. It is never a situation where people should just be on radio talking about what you think, and got guests out here who can give you something to think about. Now, Brother David Head, what position did you hold at the MTA?
I was a bus operator for 26 years. I was also chairman of the Transport Workers Union Black History Committee for about 12 years.
And you were, quote, what we would call ordinary worker.
I was an ordinary worker, and I basically moved New York City up and down 24/7.
Now listen, the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm saying is here's an ordinary brother who is doing extraordinary work, which is the capacity that we all have, including Brother Leroy. I'm not saying that I'm doing everything I must do that God has blessed me with.
Amen.
But his demonstration now, we haven't even heard. We need, look, how did you get this to become a documentary?
Through the assistance of the New York City Transit President, Howard H. Roberts. I wrote him a letter, and he supported me by coming out to the street name for Grand T. Woods and the Coney Island induction. That's another thing I like to speak about before I go off. Is Grand T. Woods invented the first electrical roller coaster.
Whoa! Go back.
Grand T.
Wait a minute. You talking about the steeplechase and all these other things we go all across country to ride on?
All that comes out of the Figure 8 amusement apparatus. Was the first electrical roller coaster in the world. There was something called a roller coaster, but it was not electrified. Grand T. Woods is the father of the modern roller coaster. The first electrical roller coaster was known as the Figure 8. And if you look at Grand T. Woods' invention of the amusement apparatus, it's the illustration is a form of an 8, and that's where the Figure 8 comes from, because he's the first inventor of the Figure 8. And I got him inducted into the Coney Island Hall of Fame. It was displayed in 1909 at Steeplechase Park. Mr. Roberts came out, and I spoke to him, and I asked him, I wrote him a letter about trying to put together a documentary. And I was not able to put it out on my own, but with help of working with Transit News, creating a production team, we put together the Grand T. Woods documentary.
Fantastic. So here you move from a little piece of research. When I say little piece, you know, you're sitting there looking at TV, say, man, Man, look, I know some black guys been involved because you got history. You got Jay Rogers and others in back of you, and then you began and you put together a display. Now this display, you move it around from school to school. You get recognition in 2004, the anniversary of the subway system in New York. Then you say, wait a minute, I seen a documentary on TV that didn't have no black folks in it. I got a display here. And you talk to the president of the MTA or the da-da-da, and they said, yeah, let's do it. And they put up some money, and the documentary is made, and where do we find that?
The documentary, they can contact me. My phone number is 917-517-1770. My book is getting ready to come out as well. And I have my email address is dlhfoundation@nyc.rr.com.
You know, you talk as fast as the trains run when we're trying to get into the station to get.
And he also got to give the book name too, because he didn't give the brother got to give the book name.
The book name is Granville T. Woods, African American pioneer, inventor in communication and transportation.
Okay,
it's going to be a children's book.
It's basically it's not what you call a children, elementary school,
right?
But for middle school, high school, and just a person that want to go into the Railroad Museum and know about transportation history is a must book.
Give your telephone number again.
My telephone number is 917-517-1770.
Brother, you coming through loud and clear this morning. Brother Sinke just came in here.
But, you know, the question I had was when you spoke about the roller coaster, electrical, what was it before? Was it magnetic? How did it work before Granville T. Woods?
It was just basically somebody going up, or they're being pulled up, very like, it was very rudimentary. Something rudimentary would just pull them up, and they can climb up some stairs, and they would get up high on these cars, and they would go down, and it would dip, and then go right back up. It was nothing that went around. Okay. It was basically just went down and went up. It was very simplistic. And I think a Frenchman invented that, but it was never electrified until Granville T. Woods came along. And it was he brought joy to the young and old.
Brother David, we are at the end. Give your telephone number again.
My phone number is 917-517-1770. I've been utilizing the Granville T. Woods Project as a tool, and I'm putting together a play about Granville T. Woods in the induction telegraph interference case that he had against Thomas Edison and Lucius J. Phelps. And I'm going to put it together for kids, by kids, for children as well.
Well, that's going to be our next interview, dear brother, and we're going to try to make that happen very soon. I want to thank you very much for whetting the appetite of black people to get into their history of black inventors and their inventions. God bless you, my brother. David Head.
Oh, yes. I pray each and every one utilize their God-given gifts and you tap into their creativity to empower themselves.
God bless you. Peace.
Peace, Brother Leroy.
WHCR 90.3 FM, New York.
And once again, this is WHCR 90.3 on the FM dial, coming to you from the campus of City College in Harlem, USA. Who do I have on the line?
Evelyn from Manhattan.
Evelyn from Manhattan, you've got to call black because we have a guest coming up, and they're coming in on the same line. So call us black.
I was trying to get you on the internet. I wanted to know the call number.
Oh, I'm sorry, www.whcr.org. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks.
All right. God bless you. Thank you for your call. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. This is John Liu. How are you?
Wait a minute. Hold it. The comptroller of New York City? Make you laugh, brother.
Brother Baylor?
Yes, indeed.
How you doing?
I'm excellent, and yourself?
I can't complain. It's a beautiful day outside. Lots of things happening all across the city, and it's the holiday season.
Well, and your voice sounds the same as when I first saw you down at DC 37, but that's quite some time ago. That's before you became got into the title that you have now. We only have a few minutes with you, and in late October, the comptroller's office found that there is a firm called Vista Equity Funds 4. That's the numeral the Roman numeral 4, and that they were qualified for pension investment, and some $225 million was deposited in this investment firm, this equity firm, the New York City Pension Funds, and it happens to be one of the largest investments in that particular equity firm. And the release that we saw indicates that it's part of the MWBE initiative that has long been on the boards here in New York City, but well, you know, this happens to be somewhat of a first in terms of a major investment. So would you just give the background on the Comptroller's Office depositing $225 million in this black-owned investment firm?
Sure. The New York City pension funds had invested in Vista Equities prior, and Vista has shown us that what it could do. It's got a very strong track record. It's returned 29.4% on the funds that we had previously invested in them. And so, as you said, this past October, a couple of months ago, we made another investment in Vista Equities, this time the largest ever in among the pension funds with an MWBE private equity firm. This $225 million has been invested with Vista, and we expect that it will be a great deal for our pensioners, our taxpayers, and at the same time, I think it just highlights, I think it just highlights what companies can do, particularly emerging companies where minorities and women have traditionally not been given a fair shot at the game. And in this case, Vista is an emerging manager that clearly has emerged.
Now, one of the bits of information that came our way is that this was not, hey, come on over here, you know, we're going to gift you with this investment of $225 million, that the process was, quote, opened up, that normally there's another process in place that automatically puts funds with someone already in a revolving line. That's my words. So clarify to us just how it came about.
Sure. Well, this is part of our expanding portfolio for emerging managers. It's a priority that I set when I first took office as comptroller last year, to level the playing field, to open up access to opportunities. And so we have expanded the pie, the piece of the pie that is intended for emerging managers to take a crack at what they can do with our pension funds and to earn excess returns. And in fact, from the selection process, Vista Equities was chosen for this $225 million. It's not the first time that my office has engaged in this. I believe the deal that you're talking about happened last summer, where we, instead of using the same rotation of investment bankers to sell New York City bonds, you know, this is somewhat different, but it all fits within the idea of expanding opportunities and leveling the playing field.
Okay.
Last summer, we, instead of using these big investment bankers that take turns, we opened up the process, put out an RFP, and allowed all the companies to respond with their best proposals. And in that case, the proposal that got the top evaluation, and we then therefore had them co-lead the deal, was a firm that prior had not done these deals for the city of New York, but wound up selling $1 billion of New York City bonds, and it turned out to be a minority firm.
Excellent. Now, the MWBE report, the average person in New York, the average citizen in New York doesn't know what the MWBE report is. Would you give us a definition, or the definition of what that report is and its significance to businesses here in New York?
It's a report that my office had issued at the end of last year and continues to update on an ongoing basis. And it's a report that gauges how city agencies are doing with regard to how they procure services and goods from the private sector. Now, for many years, City Hall had touted the fact that the city of New York does a lot of business with minority firms. They often talk about, for example, almost $400 million worth of business with minority firms. I have often felt that the city was not necessarily doing all that it could do to provide equal opportunities for minority firms. And so last year, when I first put out this MWBE report card, we highlighted the fact that, sure, about $400 million of business was done with minority firms, but that was out of $18 billion.
Wait a minute. 400 million out of how much billion?
Out of 18 billion, putting it over just over 2%. And so I felt that was, in a city like New York, woefully inadequate, and it shows, it certainly doesn't reflect what minority entrepreneurs are able to do in this city, but rather it betrays an ongoing and systemic bias that makes it very hard for emerging businesses, for minority entrepreneurs to get a fair piece of the pie. And it highlights a problem that must be addressed head on.
All right. John Liu, this is Sen-K Brathwaite. I'm a co-host here on the Communicators. I had a question about your office in the MWBE. Do you guys have any way of helping say, for example, I have experience trying to apply for contracts with MWBE, but I find that most of the people seem to be white females, and a lot of non-white females are not able to procure these contracts or get these contracts.
You're right. I have long fielded complaints about a pervasive sentiment that city contracts are not given out equally on a level playing field, and that minorities and women have a much tougher time. Now, if you look at the statistics, women entrepreneurs do significantly better than minority entrepreneurs, but even then, they're getting a tiny piece of the pie. So, if we want to look at which of us, whether it be minorities or African Americans or Latinos or Asians, are getting a bigger piece of the pie compared to the other category, the other minority and women categories, then yeah, we could say, well, this group gets a bigger piece of the pie than that group. But the point here is that no matter what, no matter how you slice it, all of the slices that we're getting are tiny compared to what the entire pie exists of.
Comptroller John Liu, how do we access the MWBE report?
The MWBE report card is on my website, which is at Comptroller. That's COMPTROLLER .nyc.gov, and it's also accessible from the city website, where you would click on the Comptroller link.
Okay.
And it's front and center. It's continuously updated, and it reflects the amount of dollars that are actually winding up with MWBE businesses. Not dollars that are promised, not dollars that are intended, but dollars that actually wind up in the hands of minority and women entrepreneurs.
Comptroller, what is the budget of the New York City Education Board, Education Department?
The budget of the Department of Education is just about 1/3 of the city's budget. It's about $22 to $24 billion annually.
Wait a minute.
It's huge.
Wait a minute. Explain the 18 billion and this, what we just...
Sure. The city budget is approaching $70 billion annually, and about 1/3 of that goes for the Department of Education. Now, the Department of Education, the budget for the Department of Education, as is the case with most other city agencies, consists of budget to pay city workers,
right,
to fund some of its operations internally.
Right.
But part of each agency's budget is, in addition to paying salaries for the city workers, in the Department of Education's case, such as teachers, there is also a budget that's set aside to buy goods and services outside from the private sector, and that is the piece of the contract budget we're talking about.
Okay, and so therefore that's in that $18 billion that you mentioned earlier.
Well, part of the $18 billion that the city of New York spent in getting goods and services from the private sector is is part of the Department of Education.
Okay, all right, that's that. Okay, now here's a company that's a tech company, and these guys are high tech, but they're black owned and operated. When they go to the Department of Education for contracts or the New York City Housing Authority for contracts, they are really deflected off from in the major service providers such as Verizon and Time Warner have gotten automatic contracts. Now, I'm not asking you to be a lawyer for these guys, but the implications is that with that kind of money, the $18 billion and only 2% going to so-called minority firms, that impacts on the employment opportunities within New York City for the inner city people. That's the direct, as opposed to just putting money into somebody's pockets for providing a service. So this high-tech company, which is capable of competing with Verizon, with Time Warner, is still left in the lurch. And so what do they do? How do they?
This link that you have just so lucidly described is why this is such a high priority for me personally as an elected official and as an activist, that we have in this city not only this huge disparity that points out unfairness for minority entrepreneurs trying to get an equal access to government contracts, government being the biggest customer in town. But we also have a long, persistent historical disparity where unemployment is far higher in communities of color. My office put out a report not too long ago that showed that unemployment is 3 times as high in communities of color than is the average within the city of New York. And these two things are inextricably linked because the reality and experience has shown that it is minority firms that are far more likely to hire people to create jobs in the neighborhoods that need those jobs the most. And we should be focusing our city's purchasing power on leveling the playing field, giving people access, and as a direct and positive byproduct, creating jobs where people need those jobs the most. And that's what we should be doing as a fiscal policy in New York City, but we just have not done that. And the intent of my MWBE report card is to show where we are falling short in the city, which city agencies need to do far better, again, to get the goods and services that we need for the public, but in the process of doing so, create the business opportunities for minority entrepreneurs so that they can create the jobs that are needed the most in the parts of the city that need it the most.
We got 2 questions before we conclude within the prescribed time of this interview. And one is, how can we as citizens and maybe some elected officials, or putting pressure on elected officials to help assist in your office in bringing about a greater share of these $18 billion that's being spent year after year?
My office, so that everybody understands, and not everybody understands everything that the Comptroller's office does, we do not give out the contracts per se. What we do is we are the last stop in approving contracts. So it is the agencies, such as the Department of Education, such as, I think you mentioned the Housing Authority before.
Yes.
Those agencies actually choose which companies to do business with, and we just give the final approval and okay once we make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. It would be helpful for people who are interested to write me and to demand that the city does better in terms of leveling the playing field and giving people equal opportunity at the billions of dollars of business the city does with the private sector every single year. It would also help if people would give me, for example, minority entrepreneurs would contact me directly and give me examples of what kinds of hardships they have faced in trying to get business from the city. We have spoken and met with dozens of minority entrepreneurs who have given me ideas about what in the contracting process can be enhanced so that there could be more equal opportunity. But I could always use more examples of exactly what has happened.
Excellent. And the last question, and this is in the 15 seconds that you have for us.
I'll make it
and that is, what kind of pushback have you experienced as a result of putting out this very revealing MWBE report?
Brother Baylor, I get the same kind of pushback that I get quite often from the mayor and city hall. They claim that my numbers are off, that I'm not including everything that should be included. The bottom line is this. Since I make all the payments, I sign all the checks for city government, all agencies, I know who's being paid what. And it's not that difficult to count which companies, especially minority entrepreneurs, are getting payments from the city of New York. And the numbers are what they are. They're not pleasant to look at, but they are what they are, and there needs to be far greater effort to improve the numbers.
Comptroller John Liu, we thank you and your staff for allowing us the few minutes that we've had with you. They've been packed with information and direction, and we wish you the very best, you and your family and your staff, this holiday season, and look forward to having you up here at Harlem Community Radio in studio January or Black History Month or as soon as your schedule allows. And thank you once again.
I look forward to it, and I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, and Happy Holidays.
Thank
Peace.
you.
God bless you.
It's time to take it to its full potential. Beat this and drop some game on the instrumental. And it's essential that you listen close and run.
Brother don't want to say we're a winner. Okay, all right. Check that brother out. All right, wait a minute. That's probably Greece.
You've been kind of confused about what your life is worth. 50 million times your weight in gold. You gotta take control, cause fools don't let it be on. You can do anything.
So you like your music sometimes sweet and sometimes hot. Jazz, that is, sweet jazz from Sugar Hill, every Sunday from 8 p.m. until 10. Le Mans Jazz Break at 8, right here on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem, where jazz lives.
And this is The Communicators coming to you from WHCR 90.3 on the FM dial. I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Harlem Community Radio and supporting the station with your listenership, and also advising others to tune into the one show that you can count on Sunday to have some guests and not be guessing what you think radio. I think that's a great waste of time personally. I think that when you ask what you think is generally coming out of the New York Post and the Daily News, because that's what a lot of us tend to read, and also you tend to get the same callers calling in. They speed dial. Bing. You hear them on this station. I'm not talking about anybody, or I'm talking about what you think radio. But Brother Sinke, we have a situation that I feel should be addressed from the highest realms in the United States. I don't necessarily hear any religious figure talking about the mayhem that is going on, the absolute bestiality that is being demonstrated. The guy burns up a woman in the elevator. Another guy kills his wife and kills himself, leaving 2 children around. Another one takes his baby girl, throws her into the water. Out in Kankakee in Illinois, 5 members of a family in a rural area, they're dead, babies and the adults. And we need to have some clarity on it. We need to have some. This is why Maury Povich and the rest of these programs can deflect people from looking at life as it really is around them, looking at people in their midst who might be going off the deep end. Someone who think that everything is lost because the woman no longer loves him or the man no longer loves her, and he doesn't have a job and that sort of thing. And there is a God, there is a supreme force, and you know, guys are on drugs and whatnot. So we need to be taking aim at clarifying things within our own families as to helping us within our family structure, that we should not just be 5 members in a family. Well, you know, I know he's gonna pay his rent. You know, he got a stash or she got a stash. That if somebody is not doing well, we need to come together as a family. And I'm saying this without any planned thought, but the demons, and the spiritual and mental demons that are out here is just horrifying. And the murders and whatnot is spreading from our young people to the adults. So, you know, I'm just throwing that out for the audience. You can respond. You may have some proverbs. Telephone number 212-491-4685, 212-491-4685. You may have some directions. You may have grandmother saying you can join in, give a few minutes of your time as being the best guest. Your observations, Brother Sinke, I don't know whether you've been seeing the news reports and whatnot. I'm just every day, and it's not just bad news. I go over, I surf the net, and I pick up information from different cities and whatnot. So I'm seeing something that's happening all over.
I mean, I'm surprised you didn't even see any news, because it seems like the only thing they want to talk about on the news these days is Tebowing.
and what's the girl, the Kim